Hey, everyone. Welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We have a highly notable guest on today. She's a partner at Pentagram since 2023. She grew up in Beirut before moving to London and is fluent in three languages and two cultures, spanning 20 plus years across branding, digital storytelling, scenography, and typography. Her career is focused on balancing aesthetics, context, and heritage with brand, voice, and purpose. Please join me in welcoming Samar Maakaraoun. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, Thomas. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
I am ready for 20 questions. I'm not sure if I'll ever be fully ready, but I'll give it a go.
Great. Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
So I'm a graphic designer. My name is Samar. As you mentioned in your intro, I am born in Beirut, Lebanon. I've been a Londoner for over 20 years now. I work as a graphic designer in brand identity, and I'm currently a partner at the company Pentagram. Among some of your guests, I think, were Pentagram partners, Natasha Jen at the Opera. The way the company works is we are a group, a collective of designers that we're interdisciplinary and collaborative. We learn from each other. We run the company together, and we sort of kind of produce work that we are interested in and that we put out to the world. The company has been around for a while. Some of your listeners may know us, some won't. And I am one of the latest partners. I'm not the latest, but I've joined recently about 2.5 years ago now.
Great. And just a note for your audience, some of you have been anticipating these Pentagram partner episodes. We have an upcoming episode with Georgia Lupi. Look out for that one. Question two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
I'm a believer that everybody's different in many ways. Obviously, no two people are the same. There are a lot of things that I actually work with difference. I find the field of how we are different as people, how we are different as companies, our perspectives are different. This is sort of my territory in terms of my work. If I were to say what makes me different when it comes to design in general, I think having moved and traveled between places that sort of aspire and adopt different cultural norms, rituals, ways of dealing with each other. And perhaps on some level, I was always interested in culture in the sense of, you could be funny in one language, in another. You could dream in one language, not necessarily dream in another. We could have silent dreams as well. That's also an option. So my ability to perhaps perceive and see things from a perspective that's not a mono perspective, perhaps like see being open to difference and sort of working with that difference for so long. That's sort of what makes me different.
Great, perfect. So question three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
To be honest, I don't know. This is a difficult question to answer. Perhaps it's a mixture of maybe on some level instinct and perhaps a desire to put some order in the world. I grew up in a very chaotic place in Lebanon during the civil war. At that time, I enjoyed drawing and color and sort of telling stories and reading, which is probably very common amongst a lot of designers or artists that end up in this sort of creative field. I was not entirely exposed to sort of creativity in the sense that, our classes or our education system didn't really make much of that sector. It was more heavily focused on the sciences and sort of, numbers and mathematics, because the vision at the time was to make a career. You need to be either a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor of the sort. And I was pretty good at sciences, like I'm a methodical person. But part of me was always curious about, what else is out there? What can you do? And I really enjoyed language and reading books. I sort of like improved my linguistic abilities by reading books I didn't entirely understand. And the way you build something, like the way you kind of make sense of a character arc or perhaps a historical book, what do you edit in and what you edit out? So maybe on some level, although I do feel like I felt my way into graphic design, maybe on some level that desire to put some order in what felt like a chaotic world when I was growing up was the driver behind where I ended up. And in some way, if you think about designing for brand identity, it's basically like trying to layer the color, meaning, strategy, purpose, form, letters to create a design system that sort of expresses what this business or this organization is about. So there is an element of like building something, but building stories or what you edit in, what you edit out is relevant. So that's really how I could answer this question. A little bit like, mixture of feeling my way into graphic design, but also having this desire to put some order sometimes where things are chaotic.
Great. Some people struggle with number four, and the question is, what does your future look like?
Well, I suppose I could tell you what my horoscope says for 2026, although I read varying horoscopes. I don't know. I guess simple answer is being at Pentagram, we're creating more projects, collaborating with partners, kind of putting out more meaningful things in the world. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I do struggle with number four to kind of say what does the future hold in a way. I'm quite happy with my present, so maybe more of what's happening presently.
Great. And five we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
It's a big part of what I do, I think, because place is part of culture, where you grow up, your definition of home, the idea of belonging, the rituals that you exercise in any certain place, the people you know. A place is not just a physical geographic definition. But also, if you think about the geographic definition, you start to kind of like go wider into the geopolitics, the idea of borders, passports, the right of way, your rights as a person to be in a certain place or not to be in that place. And obviously, with the state of the world today, that's a kind of big topic. So for me, place, I mean, identity is related to place. Very few are identities that kind of outgrew the place that they came from. But they're often created and made with a certain vision that perhaps is married to a place or maybe is trying to work against what that place represents. And that's where kind of like editing or kind of selecting what falls into any one story is important. I don't like having lived in two cities. I remember I read a book by Edward Said called Out of Place. And in the book, he kind of says once you lived in a place, in two places long enough. So let's say you spend 20 years here and 20 years there, then you don't have a home. You almost like he kind of measures it by time, right? Where is your home? Where is your idea of home? And what do you consider home to be in a way? And I guess it's interesting because once you move places and you sort of adopt you take something from here and something from there, you start to find that you're kind of curating your notion of place. And that's not necessarily a physical place, that's more a vision or a definition of internal compass in some way. So yeah, I guess it's very relevant in many ways.
Great. So six, you're starting from the beginning. What advice do you give your former younger self?
This is a hard one. These are difficult questions. I should have given them a little more thought. What advice would I give my former self? I guess as a young woman in a place that was more patriarchal, I would say have more faith, perhaps, or more trust in your abilities. I guess this advice maybe still applies to some young women today, that there is no right and wrong, that somehow what's right is what's right for you.
Great. And what's a day in your life like?
A day in my life. So I'm an early bird. I would wake up about 6 or 7, depending on what time I went to bed. I normally have coffee. I like to sit down and watch the trees and the birds for like half an hour every day before I check my phone. But sometimes emails do arrive earlier than the normal starting time because of time zones and the kind of variety of clients we work with. After that, obviously, I get dressed. I head to work. We moved office in the London office. We were in Notting Hill. Now we're in Angel, which means that I save about 50 minutes in my commute. Yay, happy days. So I get to work in 30 minutes or so. And usually I catch up with my team first thing, what we're doing for the day, if they need anything from me, if we need to look at screens. Often my meetings are in the morning. Like I try to kind of have the client meetings, presentations, all of these in the morning. And in the afternoon, I try to keep some time to do some work, to actually think and create. Doing this job is not just about sort of running projects. I still like to stay connected to the work and to sort of make sure I'm in the detail. And that's also part of our model in a way, like partners do stay close to the work we produce. We don't just delegate. And I enjoy it. I enjoy spending some time designing every day. It makes me happier. And then in the evening, often like tonight, for example, we have a talk in the studio. Sometimes I'm going to see something or a show or theater, or I'm just dining with friends, and then that's it. Simple day.
Great. So eight is about lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
I try to have about 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day, every day, where I do something different or new. I just go down a rabbit hole, or I open a new software, or I try something with AI, or I doodle a little bit, have a sketchbook. So I try to make those 15 minutes. I know it's not a lot, 15 minutes, but it's incremental. It accumulates over time. And if I don't do that, I just find that I'm just responding to all the needs and the sort of demands of the day, and things just run along. And curiosity is and constant learning is really part of my mindset in a way. I feel excited to learn something new or to discover something new. Maybe it's 15 minutes of reading. It really depends on the day, but that's what I try to do.
Great. So nine is about tools. Do you use both digital and analog tools?
Yes, definitely. I'm one of the generations that have crossed between, doing things by hand in the early days. And also, like, for example, our color studies, we had a teacher that was very meticulous. I remember in our color courses, we had to kind of color squares, 2 by 2 squares to create a gradient between, let's say, black and white, or like a white and red, and you go through all the pinks. And we had to kind of edit them with equal jumps. It was very difficult, more difficult than you think. So I guess we did a lot of manual work. There's a beauty to doing manual work as well, in the ability to be disciplined and precise, and sort of also to engage and to think with your hand. And digital tools also have a place. Typically, in our process, when we start a new brief, the way I work with my team is we try to kind of stay away from the computer for the first couple of days. We just kind of after we do the research, we identify what we're trying to create, what is the meaning behind what we're trying to create. We try to do very quick hand doodles using a variety of tools, be it a variety of pens, just to kind of flush out, because I find that the tools sometimes can be distracting. You start to kind of trying to illustrate something, and then you get distracted and you go too far down a specific idea before you actually think. So the kind of being raw in the way we draw allows us to free ourselves a little bit from the technicalities of the tool. And then there's a time where we move to use our digital tools, and this is where we start to kind of move the project from idea generation into craft, into execution.
Great. So halfway number 10, work-life balance, life-work balance. How do you deal with it?
Very badly, very, very badly. I suppose actually no, this sounds a bit negative, but maybe on some level, it's about what I don't perhaps make a huge distinction between work and life, right? For me, it's all about like my day-to-day involves a lot of kind of creativity, curiosity, trying things. So there is joy in that. And in terms of the work-life balance, kind of like a more a recent term in the sense that you should leave work at 5 o'clock or not work on the weekend. Unfortunately, I still do. I don't expect my team to do that. We try to respect the boundaries of, I think people can actually deliver quite a lot in a 7 hour day if they know how they work and they kind of follow their own rhythm in when they can be efficient or not efficient. So I guess when it comes to my, especially in the first few years at Pentagram, because the group is a multitude of very big, very well-known designers. So the new people that come in have to spend some time establishing kind of their our own sort of perhaps voice within the group because the group is kind of full of people. And I guess that means we have to do a lot of talks, kind of sharing our work. All of this is sort of work on top of our day-to-day work with kind of normal running projects. So this means that our schedules are quite packed. And our work-life balance is not entirely there, but it's getting there.
Great. So 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
I think I'll be doing something to do with perhaps composing, maybe like composing music. So it would be also like, putting things together on a musical timeline, although I play no music instruments. Or perhaps I would be kind of a writer of sorts. Again, not two things that I have zero ability in. But since the question is about like thinking, yeah, I think I would be doing something that has to do with a similar process in a way of uh, editing, putting a story together, be it musical or be it with words. That's what I guess I'd be doing. Yeah.
Great. And what would you not like to do with your career?
I would not like to be in the army in any shape or form. I would not like to be a surgeon because I mean I have a lot of respect for surgeons, but it's not something I can do in any way, shape, or form. It's yeah. So these are two things that I know I cannot do. Even I cannot and I would not want to do in any way in this life. Who knows? Maybe another life.
Great. And do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I like a lot of words. For this question, I'm gonna gift you a word that doesn't exist in English, but it's a really nice word. And it's a word in Arabic that we use when someone kind of comes out of the shower and they're clean and blissful and fresh. So we have a word in Arabic, Lebanese slang called na'iman, which translates as blissfully or heavenly. We can also use it when someone's had a haircut or when a man had a clean shave. What I like about this word is that it kind of like marks a moment. They say if you don't have a word for something, this something doesn't exist. So we only know an apple because we have a word to describe that this is an apple. And this is kind of a word that describes a moment. It's called Naiman, and we always mark the moment. So we automatically say it. Like if you see your mother coming out of the shower, your brother or your sister, you just kind of straight away say that word as in, we know you're feeling fresh and this is a nice feeling. So Naiman.
Great. And do you have a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I guess on the favorite and not so favorite word, one thing to say is that, language changes with time, with context, with what's happening in the world, with what's happening in the sector and the field we're working in. That's how buzzwords are made and then are disappearing. One of the words of today, I guess one word that I find myself cringing when I hear is the word neutral. This is really partly because the world is so divided and we have seen a lot of violence in the last 2 years, which is making our lives and the cognitive dissonance in our lives of us going to work, working with something creative, feeling safe and secure, while perhaps a huge number of people in the world do not have those feelings. So I personally feel there's an amount of cognitive dissonance in the last 2 years that I cannot ignore. And the idea of neutrality, when we start talking about neutral or being neutral, is sort of maybe on some level one can only afford to be neutral. Some people cannot afford to be neutral about something that's very upsetting. I prefer the word indifferent if you had to be like, okay, I don't care about this. But I don't believe anyone can actually be neutral because perspective and position and power structures sort of come into every equation or every situation. So I guess that word lost its meaning, especially when we also saw all sort of systems in the world fall apart, like the human rights, the United Nations. You have presidents walking around, capturing other presidents and getting away with it. And no one can do anything about this. So somehow it feels like we're at a moment where neutrality is not really an option. So
Mm.
I chose to select this word just for it's a symbol of our time as well. Maybe if I listen to this podcast in 2 years, neutral will be back because somebody would have brought it back and kind of demonstrated some level of neutrality. But I feel like in today's world with what's going on, it's impossible to be neutral. It's almost as well, I can't afford to be neutral about certain things. And I believe a lot of people feel that way. I guess the Pantone color of the year was an example of that, or the comments on the Pantone color of the year were a good example of that. That's where neutral sort of as a word or as a definition sort of failed. Yeah.
Great. And you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
This is a difficult one. I'm gonna be pragmatic about this. I am perhaps tenacious. I think a lot of people would say I'm tenacious, not in a stubborn way, but more in perhaps if I want something, I would feel like I would find ways around it. If one way doesn't work, I try another. I don't give up easily. I'm not a quitter. So maybe that's perhaps that's why I'm here. But yeah, I think tenacity is an underrated quality. It's good to be tenacious, but it's also good to know when to give up as well.
Great. And what keeps you up at night?
Different things. Uh, recently, if I watch the news, I don't. I stay up at night because it's very upsetting, and what's happening in Sudan, Gaza, also like the state of the world, what Trump is doing. These worries about the violence that we've created in our world today is not great. Sometimes I replay things in my head if there's a solution that I'm trying to get at, but it doesn't entirely get there. I do stay up a bit thinking about that. But one of my 2026 resolutions is to get 8 hours sleep for the work-life balance. Back to your question.
Mhm. Great. And what's a dream you're chasing?
Perhaps a life well lived. And I don't mean by that a life of excess where, you fly everywhere, you're on holiday all the time. A life well lived for me is more about having the agency to make your own choices and to execute those choices and to go about your life doing what you believe is right. Having joy in your day to day, that's a life well lived. Being able to play, not to forget that, even as adults, uh, being playful, being able to laugh. So simple things, I guess, very simple. I mean,
Great.
I do dream of world peace, but it doesn't really, it feels a bit, what am I going to do about world peace? But hey,
Great. And the last few here, number 18, what inspires you?
I think people what inspires me, people who don't necessarily fit in labels or do things in a very particular way. So, for example, writers like Arundhati Roy or Elif Shafak, artists like Simone Brewsters, who they kind of define labels and ways of being. And they have the courage to go about their lives in their own way and sort of to explore and to play and to be curious, to follow what they want and to kind of say what they have to say without necessarily abiding by what is right or what the governmental line is or what the clan or the tribe wants you to say or what the religion wants you to say. So freer people in their thinking, people who are free in their mind. I find that inspiring.
Great. And 19, advice. Any advice you'd like to share?
Um, I'm not big on advice giving because the advice really is relevant to the group. So it depends who is listening, if students are listening, if adults are listening. I mean, business owners, I don't know who your listeners are, but I would like to share a bit of advice that my dad gave me, who sort of used to say to us all. I grew up in a family of four. He would say that whatever you do, whatever you're asked to do it in the best way you can. And I find that if you adopt that, regardless of what you're doing, what project you have on, who you're working with, whether the conditions are perfect conditions or whether the conditions are less than perfect, if you adopt that technique of doing everything in the best way you can, things sort of accumulate and create a sort of impact that is bigger than any one action. So maybe that's a way of yeah, passing it on.
Great. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
Listeners can keep tabs on social media as they do. And if, yeah, some talks that we do are recorded. I'm not very prolific socially. I think I just kind of talk about work that is interested and interesting to people, but I'm not sure what other tabs they'd want to keep. But I think that's as far as I share. So it's all public, whatever's public, they can check.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining today. It's a real privilege to have you on and great to connect with London. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.